back, everybody. Unit 5, too much of a good thing. We're going to do reading 1 today, and let's start with the 3 focus questions on the topic. Number 1, it has been projected that by the year 2050, the average lifespan will reach 125. And by 2087, it will be 150. Wow. Do you think living longer is a good thing? Can you imagine that you have 150 birthdays? Why would it be a good thing, or why not? Think about how such issues as relationships, marriage, family structure, and career might be affected. 150 birthday parties, that's a whole lot. 2, immortality means living forever. Do you know stories or myths about the desire or search for immortality? Oh, there are. Number 3, if scientists could create a pill that would allow you to live twice as long while staying healthy, would you take it? Would I? Okay, I gotta think of that one too. But once we meet virtually, we're gonna talk about this because these are interesting questions. Look at this picture. Look at his grandpa. Unbelievable. This man is flexible, I tell you. I don't think I can do that. I know I can do that. I wonder if you can. Right. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about. We're still talking about longevity. And in reading 1, we're talking about death do us part. And as usual, we always look at the vocabulary first, the bold-faced words. Reading 1 is a story about Marissa and her husband Leo. Reads the letter Marissa wrote to a friend about Leo. Then choose the definition that best defines each bold-faced word. So we've got vigorous, punctually, immeasurable, disparate, utterly, awesome, impetuous, and we go to the next page. Insufferable, chilly, presumptuous, fond of, and ultimately. Okay, so we've got 12 words. I'd like you to read through the text and pick the correct definition for the bold-faced words. So, for instance, number 1, vigorous. Is it A, mean, B, energetic, or C, lazy? You're gonna answer numbers 1 to 12. Pause your video to do this. Go ahead. Awesome. That was the vocabulary. Now we get to the previewing. Since we're going to read a text which is called Death Do Us Part by Robert Silverberg. Here you go. I want you to preview the text. What does that mean again? Remember? Right, that means predicting the genre of the text and the purpose of the text, and we do that because it gives us focus. Exactly. Now, we do that by looking at the title, the visuals, and often also headings or subheadings. If the text would have them, we would include that. This is a long text, people. Wow. This is really long. You see that? All the way down to here. Okay? So, let's start with our preview. Read the first 2 paragraphs of Death Do Us Part, then work with a partner to answer the questions. So the first 2 paragraphs would be this part, yeah, up till here, punctually. Okay, read that and then answer questions 1 to 6 to just get an idea of what this text holds. You can pause your video to do this. Go ahead. Okay, now we're going to read the rest of the story, but before we do that, I'd like you to skim the text first. Remember skimming, right? You read the introductory paragraph, the topic sentence of every body paragraph, and then you read the concluding paragraph. And we do that to get the main idea. Exactly. Is that important? Yes. You need to have the structure. The main idea gives you the structure of the whole text, what this text generally is about. So the previewing gives us the text type, purpose, which creates focus. Skimming gives us the main idea. What we do after that is we often go to the questions, annotate them. So we circle, underline, highlight the keywords to know what the question is about and what it asks us to do. And then we go back to the text and we can read the text. And while we're reading, we annotate. So while you're skimming, you annotate. While you're reading, you annotate as well. And you can go back to the questions to answer. I'm going to ask you to pause your video to skim, and while you're skimming, please annotate the introductory paragraph, every topic sentence, and the concluding paragraph while you do that. Okay, pause your video. Go ahead. Great. That brings us right now to the reading of the complete text. So you are going to read and listen along while I turn on the audio. I can scroll, so you're gonna keep reading it through looking at your book. Okay? Awesome. Let's go.
Death Do Us Part by Robert Silverberg. It was her first, his seventh. She was 32, he was 363. The good old May-December number. They honeymooned in Venice, Nairobi, the Malaysia Pleasure Dome, and one of the posh L5 resorts, a shimmering glassy sphere with round-the-clock sunlight and waterfalls that tumbled like cascades of diamonds. And then they came home to his lovely sky house, suspended on tremulous guy wires, 1,000 meters above the Pacific, to begin the everyday part of their life together. Her friends couldn't get over it. "He's 10 times your age," they would exclaim. "How could you possibly want anybody that old?" Marilisa admitted that marrying Leo was more of a lark for her than anything else. An impulsive thing, a sudden impetuous leap. Marriages weren't forever, after all, just 30 or 40 years, and then you moved along. But Leo was sweet and kind, and actually quite sexy. And he had wanted her so much. He genuinely did seem to love her. Why should his age be an issue? He didn't appear to be any older than 35 or so. These days, you could look as young as you like. Leo did his process faithfully and punctually, twice each decade, and it kept him as dashing and vigorous as a boy. There were little drawbacks, of course. Once upon a time, long, long ago, he had been a friend of Marilisa's great-grandmother. They might have even been lovers. She wasn't going to ask. Such things sometimes happened, and you simply had to work your way around them. And then also he had an ex-wife on the scene, number 3, Katrine, 247 years old and not looking a day over 30. She was constantly hovering about. Leo still had warm feelings for her. A wonderfully dear woman, a good and loyal friend, he would say. When you get to know her, you'll be as fond of her as I am. That one was hard, all right. What was almost as bad, he had children 3 times Marilisa's age and more. One of them, the next to youngest, Fyodor, had an insufferable and presumptuous way of winking and sniggering at her. "I want you to meet our father's newest toy," Fyodor said of her once, when yet another of Leo's centenarian sons, previously unsuspected by Marilisa, turned up. "We get to play with her when he's tired of her." Someday, Marilisa was going to pay him back for that. Still in all, she had no serious complaints. Leo was an ideal first husband. Wise, warm, loving, attentive, and generous. She felt nothing but the greatest tenderness for him. And then, too, he was so immeasurably experienced in the ways of the world. If being married to him was a little like being married to Abraham Lincoln or Augustus Caesar, well, so be it. They had been great men, and so was Leo. He was endlessly fascinating. He was like 7 husbands rolled into one. She had no regrets. None at all. Not really. In the spring of '87, they go to Capri for their first anniversary. Their hotel is a reconstructed Roman villa on the southern slope of Monte Tiberio. Alabaster wall frescoed in black and red, a brilliantly colored mosaic of sea creatures in the marble bathtub, a broad travertine terrace that looks out over the sea. They stand together in the darkness, staring at the awesome sparkle of the stars. A crescent moon slashes across the night. His arm is around her. Her head rests against his breast. Though she is a tall woman, Marilisa is barely heart-high to him. Tomorrow at sunrise, he says, we'll see the Blue Grotto, and then in the afternoon we'll hike down below here to the cave of the Mater Magna. I always get a shiver when I'm there, thinking about the ancient islanders who worship their goddess under that cliff, somewhere back in the Pleistocene. Their rites and rituals, the offerings they made to her. Is that when you first came here? She asks, keeping it light and sly. Somewhere in the Pleistocene? A little later than that, really. The Renaissance, I think it was. Leonardo and I traveled down together from Florence. You and Leonardo? You were like that? Like that, yes, but not like that, if you take my meaning. And Cosimo de' Medici, another one from the good old days. Cosimo gave such great parties, right? That was Lorenzo, he says. Lorenzo the Magnificent, Cosimo's grandson. Much more fun than the old man. You would have adored him. I almost think you're serious when you talk like that. I'm always serious, even when I'm not. His arm tightens around her. He leans forward and down and buries a kiss in her thick, dark hair. I love you, he whispers. I love you, she says. You're the best first husband a girl could want. You're the finest last wife a man could ever desire. The words skewer her. Last wife? Is he expecting to die in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years? He is old, ancient, but nobody has any idea yet where the limits of the process lie. 500 years? 1,000? Who can say? No one able to afford the treatments has died a natural death yet in the 400 years since the process was invented. Why then does he speak so knowingly of her as his last wife? He may live long enough to have 7, 10, 50 wives after her. Marilisa is silent a long while. Then she asks him, quietly, uncertainly, I don't understand why you said that. Said what? The thing about my being your last wife. He hesitates a moment. But why would I ever want another, now that I have you? Am I so utterly perfect? I love you. You love Tedesca and Tane and Lavilda too, she says. And Yole and Katrine. She is counting on her fingers in the darkness. One wife is missing from the list. And Ciante. See, I know all their names. You must have loved them, but the marriage ended anyway. They have to end. No matter how much you love a person, you can't keep a marriage going forever. How do you know that? I just do. Everybody knows it. I would like this marriage never to end, he tells her. I'd like it to go on and on and on, to continue to the end of time. Is that all right? Is such a sentiment permissible, do you think? What a romantic you are, Leo. What else can I be but romantic tonight? This place, the spring night, the moon, the stars, the sea, the fragrance of the flowers in the air, our anniversary. I love you. Nothing will ever end for us. Nothing. really be so? She asks. Of course, forever and ever, as it is this moment. She thinks from time to time of the men she will marry after she and Leo have gone their separate ways, for she knows that she will. Perhaps she'll stay with Leo for 10 years, perhaps for 50, but ultimately, despite all his assurances to the contrary, one or the other of them will want to move on. No one stays married forever. 15, 20 years, that's the usual. 60 or 70 tops. She'll marry a great athlete next, she decides, and then a philosopher, and a political leader, and then stay single for a few decades, just to clear her palate, so to speak. An intermezzo in her life. And when she wearies of that, she'll find someone entirely different. A simple, rugged man who likes to hunt, to work in the fields with his hands. And then a yachtsman with whom she'll sail the world. And then maybe when she's about 300, she'll marry a boy, an innocent of 18 or 19, who hasn't even had his first prep yet. And then, a childish game. It always brings her to tears, eventually. The unknown husbands that wait for her in the misty future are vague, chilly phantoms, fantasies, frightening and inimical. They're like swords that will inevitably fall between her and Leo, and she hates them for that. The thought of having the same husband for all the vast expanse of time that is the rest of her life is a little disturbing. It gives her a sense of walls closing in, and closing and closing and closing. But the thought of leaving Leo is even worse, or of his leaving her. Maybe she isn't truly in love with him. At any rate, not as she imagines love at its deepest to be. But she is happy with him. She wants to stay with him. She can't really envision parting with him and moving on to someone else. But of course she knows that she will. Everybody does in the fullness of time. Everybody. Leo is a sand painter. Sand painting is his 15th or 20th career. He has been an architect, an archaeologist, a space habitats developer, a professional gambler, an astronomer, and a number of other disparate and dazzling things. He reinvents himself every decade or two. That's as necessary to him as the process itself. Making money is never an issue, since he lives on the compounding interest of investments set aside centuries ago. But the fresh challenge, ah yes, always the fresh challenge. Marilisa hasn't entered on any career path yet. It's much too soon. She is, after all, still in her first life. Too young for the process. Merely in the prep stage yet. Just a child, really. She has dabbled in ceramics, written some poetry, composed a little music. Lately she has begun to think about studying economics, or perhaps Spanish literature. No doubt her actual choice of a path to follow will be very far from any of these. But there's time to decide. Oh, is there ever time?
Okay, great. That's a very interesting story because we're talking here about two people who are basically not aging. Yeah, a process in which people can live forever and stay young. So if you can live forever, what would that look like? That is weird, right? Now that's what we're going to talk about. Now, for the main idea, look again at your predictions from the preview on page 126. How did your answers to the questions help you understand the story? Okay, let's take a quick look. That was here. The answer to these questions, how did it help you to understand the story? Reading 1 discusses Marilissa's and Leo's views on marriage, family structure and relationships, careers, and longevity. Write sentences about how their views are different from the present day society views described. Yeah. For example, marriage. Present day society, marriage is seen as a lifelong commitment. Although in some societies divorce is common, some people may have more than one or two marriages, but still it is viewed as something that should last a lifetime. But in the story Death Do Us Part, marriage is viewed differently, basically because they live forever. Yeah, this guy Leo is what, 300 something. So yeah, I would like you to write down um, what the view was of the text in comparison to the present day view. Also on family structure, relationships, careers, and longevity. You can pause your video to look this up in the text. So look at this present day society view and then go back to the text to find how that is correlated to the Death Do Us Part view. Go ahead. Awesome. So those were the main points, yeah, correlating today's views with the views in the text. Now we're going to look at the details, more specific. Marilisa and Leo have different perspectives on the topics in the chart. I'd like you to complete the chart with examples of their different views. So we've got the topic marriage. Marilisa says first marriage, assumes she'll be married again to a variety of men because she assumes herself to be alive for what, 500, 600 years? But what does Leo think about it? I think he said that Marilisa was his last one, right? And what does he say about marriage? Then I'd like you to fill out the different ideas between Marilisa and Leo about family structure, relationships, careers, and longevity. Please fill out this table. You can pause your video. Go ahead. Okay, great. That brings us to making inferences. As you know, inferences are an educative guess, prediction that you're making. To make inferences, we basically look up, we look for the facts that we can find that are literally stated. We combine it and find a conclusion from there. Combining those facts, we get a conclusion, and the conclusion is the implied meaning. Writers sometimes suggest relationships between characters in a story without stating them directly. We're talking here about understanding characters' attitudes and feelings. So sometimes the relationships are not really explained. Yeah, not really stated, and we just kind of have to infer, know what it is by reading through the lines, or in between the lines. We use inference to understand characters' attitudes and feelings on a deeper level by reading between the lines. For example, how does Marilisa feel about Leo? That's paragraph 2. That he is youthful. He's very old, he's 300 something, but he's youthful. The evidence we can find in paragraph 2, we learn that Marilisa's friends are concerned about Leo's age. Marilisa doesn't seem as bothered because marriages aren't forever anyways. We also learn that her marriage was a lark, but she doesn't say that Leo himself is a joke. He's actually sweet, kind, and sexy, and this makes him appear youthful to Marilisa, even though she's in her 30s and he's like 300 something. After reading the text closely, we can infer, or we can conclude, that Marilisa's strongest feelings about Leo is that he is youthful. So by reading between the lines and using inferences, by looking at the facts, combining the facts and finding the conclusion, the underlying meaning, we find deeper meaning. Now, this is exactly what I want you to try. I want you to circle the best answer, refer to the paragraphs in the parentheses, cite the evidence from the story that supports your answer. For example, number 1, how does Marilisa feel about Catherine? That is mentioned in paragraph 3. Go back to paragraph 3 to scan through it and find what Marilisa feels about Catherine. Is it warm, loyal, or jealous? And please write down the evidence, because for everything that we state, we have to have evidence. Exactly. So just write down the evidence, paragraph, and then what line it is. Okay? You can just refer to the line or the line within the paragraph. Okay? Please do numbers 1 to 5. You can pause your video to do it now. Go ahead. Great. That brings us to the end of our lesson today. Expressing opinions. Remember, Mostly for this, we use peel, yeah, point, explanation, evidence, and linking back. We also use, sometimes I refer to it as AREL, remember, AREL, assertion. That's the reasoning or the opinion. And then the R for reasoning, the E for evidence, and the L for linking back. That's called a structure or a formalized way of speaking. It is so good if you can reason, have your own opinion on things, but remember that you always express it with the right structure. Always give a reason for why you have that opinion. At best, even come up with evidence or an example and always link it back. Also, always be respectful of other people's opinion and give other people a chance to express themselves as well. We're going to discuss these 3 questions in our next virtual meeting, but I'd like you to think about it now. So once we meet, you can express yourself fluently. Number 1, Leo was 10 times her age. Would you marry someone older than you? Oh, let's think about that one. And older than you by how much? As in how many years older than you? And what possible advantages or even disadvantages are there to marrying someone much older than you? It might have advantages. It might also have disadvantages, right? Think about that. Number 2, the story mentions that with the process, so that's the process of not aging and not dying, I think, living forever. These days, you could look as young as you like. What age would you choose to look if you're having the process? So with what age would you like to stick? And then for the rest of your life, until eternity, be that age. What would you choose and why? Guys, this is interesting. Number 3, Leo has had many different careers. He reinvents himself every decade or 2, so every 20 years. That's as necessary to him as the process itself. Now, why do you think he changes career so often? Or would you want to reinvent yourself every decade or 2, every 10 years, every 20 years, reinventing yourself? And why would you want that? Or why not? Okay, think about these questions. So the next meeting that we're going to meet each other again, virtually, we can talk about this. And that's exciting because I would love to know what you have to say to these questions. Okay, that brings us to the end already. We started off with reading 1, going over the vocabulary of the bold-faced words and connecting them with the definitions. So really what each word means by picking them from a multiple choice options. Then we went to previewing to predict the text genre and the purpose, get the focus, and then we went into skimming to get the main idea. Yes, and then we read the text while also listening to the audio. We then looked at the main ideas. The main ideas are the broader points on the text that can be developed, and we use details to develop them. Now, the main ideas, what you did was you read the present day society view, what we have in our life, and then comparing that, what the text said about that same topic, but what their view was on it, and that was the death do us part view. So comparing it. Then we looked at the details, the specific points, details that are used to develop main ideas, and you had to look at the differing views between Marilisa and Leo and fill out the table on the topics of marriage, family structure, careers, and longevity. After that, we went over making inferences, the educated guess, understanding characters' attitudes and feelings that are expressed with an underlying meaning. They're not expressed literally, but you kind of have to figure out what it is by paying notice to the facts, and from there grasp the conclusion to know. And last but not least, you expressed your opinion using formalized structure of Peel or RL to say what you think, explain what you think, come with evidence, and linking it back. Awesome. Okay, guys, this is the end of our lesson. You did an amazing job today. I'm going to see you soon in the next video. I'm excited. I hope you are too. See you soon, and God bless you. Bye.